You're listening to the Reinvest Podcast, where each Tuesday we will show you how to reclaim, reconnect, and refocus your life by bringing you the top real estate professionals in the industry. We'll pull back the curtain so you can implement these tools and tactics to build generational wealth. Your hosts, Garrett Gatton and Seth Simonillo. Well, thanks for joining us on episode 28 of the Reinvest Podcast, where Seth and I show you how to maximize your life through the power of real estate investing. Been listening to some podcasts, some news outlets here as of late, and there is a lot happening right now in our economy and in the real estate landscape.
Banks are failing, sky might be falling. You never know.
It's an exciting time to be alive for sure. So yeah, what are you hearing from investors? What are you kind of sensing in the market, Seth?
There's a lot of doom and gloom. Everybody's kind of waiting for the pin to drop right now. I think everybody's like, "Hey, shore up your loose ends, tighten the belt, and get ready for some potentially hard times." If we really, everybody's kind of like, "Are we going to dive into a real deep hard recession, or is it just going to be kind of a small recession and things are going to rebound and we're going to be okay?" So everyone, everybody's kind of preparing for the worst, hoping for the best.
I think investors are funny because anytime there's a government organization or agency that comes out with some kind of statistic, it seems like investors double how bad it really seems, So I was just listening to a podcast today, and, the recent inflation statistics come out at like 6.2, and, people really think it's closer to 13% in the investment community. And, real estate agents are like, hey, interest rates will be coming down here in the next couple of months, trying to stir up some buyers and whatnot. And then investors are like, yeah, we're not going to see interest rates come down for like the next 6 to 9 months. So it's just funny, the perspective out there. But I think you got to be prepared. You got to be having your ear to the ground, and don't just get your information from one source. So I know a lot of you guys only listen to our podcast, and you got to get out there. It's a wide world. So, but no, a lot happening, a lot of cool stuff. But today I'm excited to talk about building wealth through the avenue of real estate. Okay, it's got many benefits. Obviously, that's why we're bought and sold on it: leverage, fixed debt, cash flow, potential. But one of the greatest tools is actually, in building wealth, is deferring taxes so that you can put your hard-earned capital to work again and again and again. And today we have a 1031 exchange specialist, Dave Foster, with us to pull back the curtain. Dave, how we doing?
I'm doing awesome, but wait a minute. There's other podcasts?
That's right, Dave.
Dave only listens to our podcast.
It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. So, Dave, you're the founder of the 1031 Investor, and you are a qualified intermediary for investors who are using the 1031 exchange tax benefit.
Exactly. That's what we do. And like you guys, well, actually, maybe not like you guys, I'm a frustrated investor at heart. So, I was last listening to you going, that's exactly right. Kim Kardashian gets a new boyfriend, and it's either the start of the next ice age or the coming of spring, if you don't know who you're talking to. So, yeah, you got to learn to read leaves and then just be bold and be consistent.
Yeah. The consistency is huge. A lot of people want to, do I need to exit the market right now? And one guy said it, very accurately. We're in the real estate investing business, and a business is always there. It's always running. It's always functioning. So it's not a matter of like, what's a hobby and it's time to set it aside, but it's how do I make the adjustments necessary to continue doing what is my business?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Someone I was talking to once just last week talked about the fact that when you exit and then come back in and do all that, sometimes that works for stocks. But the problem is with real estate, particularly where I live with the 1031 exchange, every time you do that, you lose the effect of your compounding. Mm-hmm. And that's what the 1031 is really all about. I'm sitting here looking at that gorgeous sign, and I'm thinking, you know what? Yeah, it's real estate investing, but that's also the quintessential essence of what the 1031 exchange does, is it allows you to reinvest the tax dollars that normally you would have to pay if you exited. And by doing that, you get the revenue. You get the income of those reinvested tax dollars. And then guess what? You get to get the income off the income.
Right.
that you made off the tax. And that's the compounding effect.
It feels like a cheat code. You know what I mean? You're like,
It does.
yeah, you're like, man, I've just figured it out. I can reuse that all over again.
Dave feels a little. He's like, don't refer to my industry as a cheat code.
It's the biggest loophole ever.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's been part of the tax code for 100 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
you're right. I mean, in the beginning days, people would ask us what we did. And we'd say, well, we could tell you, but we'd have to kill you. Because nobody knew what's this qualified intermediary thing. Nowadays, it's starting to become more mainstream. But even now, there's the reason why we exist is because the IRS lost a court case 25 years ago. And just imagine how happy they were about that.
Yeah.
So they have to let us do these, but they're certainly not going to tell you how. They're certainly not going to market it to you. And they really just hope you'll be a good little soldier and pay the tax.
And
But
there's
the
a lot of
benefits
good
that you
little
don't are
soldiers
huge.
out there that do that,
Oh, yeah.
not knowing what's even available to them.
So Dave, the difference between you and other people that do 1031 exchanges is that you are an active investor. So what kind of real estate investing do you partake in?
I have been in everything from single to multifamily to commercial to land development and construction, vacation rentals. You name it, we've done it. Um, I can tell you guys a story that really illustrates how we used 1031 exchanges to take us from zero to a tax-free sailboat in the Bahamas.
Wow, please.
Want to hear it?
That sounds like
Let's
the cover
hear
of a book.
Funny you should say that because it's going to be. It's 1995, and we're in Denver. Now, I'm a Kansas farm boy. There ain't no ocean in Kansas. My wife is a Minneapolis girl. There ain't no ocean in Minneapolis. We're living in Denver. There ain't no ocean in Colorado. But we were trying to figure out how to get off the train and take advantage of the most important commodity that anybody has, which is not money, it's time. So somehow we just crazily decided, you know what? We had our first child. Let's learn how to sail and go sailing, and we'll live on a sailboat the rest of our lives. Well, I am a ready, fire, aim guy. So that totally just sung to my heart. So, okay, fine, let's go learn how to sail. But how are we going to make our money to live? And we looked at it and said, like so many people today, there are two groups of people that have always ruled the world. The first are banks, and the second are landowners. I'm too lazy to become a bank, and I'm glad I'm not, because this ain't a good day to be one. But I can own the land. And so that's what we decided to do. So bought a duplex, fixed it up, sold it. Man, I'm the stud of the world until I met with my accountant who said, yeah, the bad news, right? What I didn't realize was everybody's got a silent partner named Uncle Sam. And Uncle Sam is always going to do better than you unless you're careful. So, right then, although I paid that tax bill, we learned about the 1031 exchange. We started the business. I joined with some friends of mine. And from right there, we were hooked. From that moment, the rest of our time in Colorado, every time we sold an investment property, we would do a 1031 exchange, which let us use the tax dollars to buy the new property and not have to pay it. A couple times we would convert. This is the icing on the cake thing that hopefully your listeners will stay around for, because we can talk about this more. But there's an opportunity to turn this from tax deferred into tax free. And we would convert properties into our primary residences and then sell them tax free. We had to get to water to sale, so we 1031 exchanged our entire portfolio from Colorado to Connecticut, doing the same thing. A couple years later, we realized we had forgotten to ask for warm water to sail in. So we positioned our entire portfolio in Florida, doing the exact same thing. And 10 years to the week of setting our goal, we actually purchased a 53-foot sailboat with tax-free dollars, moved aboard and lived on it for 10 more years, raising our 4 children, and living off of my private clients and the income from our fleet of short-term rentals, all with a bunch of deferred tax on them.
Wow.
Whoa.
Wow.
That's the story.
That's crazy. I mean, I'm just thinking about being a kid getting raised on a sailboat. I mean,
do you have children? You guys?
Yeah.
Do you do the timeout thing?
We are starting to get to that. Yeah.
Okay. Timeout on a boat is beautiful because there's no space, right? So if they were getting too annoying, we would just put the dinghy off the back of the boat and make them climb in and tow it.
Is that serious?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was off. Hey, the statute of limitations is over. My kids are growing, but they would love it because they'd start out mad and we'd be on the back of the boat, obviously. But 10 minutes later, they'd be hitting each other with the oars and laughing and splashing and throwing each other in the water. Best timeout place ever.
Wow.
Dude, I'm just thinking like some leverage you could use. Be like, listen, we're in shark infested waters. If you if you make me lose my cool one more time, you're going in the dinghy. So they're pretty proficient then in swimming and very comfortable. I mean, have they adopted that lifestyle? You sail with your family? Do they do that with theirs?
We have not for a while because we had to come ashore and start to get college and that kind of stuff out of the way. But yeah, they were sailing in open water around the sailboat, no flotation by the time they were 5.
Wow.
And they think of themselves as boat kids. So, I mean, you got to waterproof them as early as possible. Otherwise, you'll drive yourself crazy. But yeah, it was a beautiful lifestyle. There's people throughout the Caribbean that know them and love them. And it was a good life.
That's awesome.
But what was best about it? The government paid for a bunch of it.
Yes, and that's the rallying cry for so many investors that listen to our podcast and that we rub shoulders with is, there's a claim on your time, and you're trying to figure out a way to remove that claim so that you can be on the stern, at the bow, pilot of your own ship, kind of thing.
Literally,
those were poor boating analogies because obviously I'm not a boating guy, but
it's the pointy thing at the front.
Yeah, it's the thing that you turn so that it goes where you want, and to take control of your life, and that's what this promises is real estate, but and specifically getting into these tax strategies. So, walk us through some of your favorite case studies on clients that used 1031 exchanges, or even your own scenario. You kind of flew over at 30,000 feet just to get in some number crunching because people are like, "Oh, tax deferment, I like that." But until you
and then they start snoring. I get it. It's true. No offense taken.
But when you start talking about how much you would have paid the government that you didn't, and then how that resulted in an increase in cash flow, that gets people's attention. Those are metrics investors understand.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's a very real example that I've used before. They're theoretical investors, but what we did was we set up a model where there are 2 investors who buy the exact same property, sell at the exact same time, make the exact same return, use the exact same down payment. The only difference between the 2 is that one of them does a 1031 exchange. So they owe the tax, but it's indefinitely deferred. The other investor pays the tax as they go. So they don't owe any tax, but with the first transaction, when they sell with a $100,000 gain, we're assuming that capital gains between federal and state would be like 20%. So that's a $20,000 tax bill, right? One investor pays it, but then they only have $80,000 left to put down. So they can buy like a $430,000 property, $400,000 property at 20% down. The other investor does a 1031 exchange. So instead of having 80,000, they have $100,000. So what can they buy at 20% down? $100,000 property. So right there in the very first transaction, the investor doing the 1031 can buy and control more real estate, which translates to more appreciation, more cash flow, more amortization of the loan, all of those things that go into that beautiful, delicious IRR return, right?
Mm-hmm.
Transaction number, so right there's $100,000 difference. Transaction 2 continues that, By transaction 3, every 5 years, the investor doing the 1031 exchanges owns more than $1 million of real estate more than investor B.
Wow.
Now, they have a bunch of deferred tax. We get it. But they own a bunch more real estate. And in year 20, after only doing one transaction every 5 years, the investor doing the 1031 exchanges will own $12 million worth of real estate.
Mm.
The investor that does not do the 1031 exchanges will own about $4.5 million.
Whoa.
With everything
Wow.
consistent.
Wow. That's wild.
So think about the power of that. So even if the investor doing the 1031 says, okay, I'm scared. I owe $500,000 in tax. How many months of cash flow from a $12 million portfolio will it take to pay that off and then start sleeping again?
Right.
5 or 6 months. And that's the power of the 1031. You reinvest the proceeds and the tax, and it generates more cash flow. So that's the overall impact of the 1031. You kind of started to ask me, how do my investors use them? And I like to think about real estate investing. In my life, it's been this way. I'm not the same real estate investor I was 25 years ago. And I'm not the same investor I'll be 5 years from now. It's going to change. I call it the life cycle of a real estate investor. Like starting out as a caterpillar, going into the chrysalis, becoming this beautiful butterfly, from novice to experienced. So here's where our investors have all used this tool for their benefit throughout their life cycle. And it's condensed down into what I call the 4 Ds of 1031 investing. So I know you guys are going to pop some flash questions on me later because you're the only podcast I watch. So I know you do it. So I'm going to turn the tables. I'm going to give you guys a quiz right now. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Good thing we're not live. Just kidding.
I'll give you the first answer, and then you'll give me the second one. So the first D of 1031 investing is defer, specifically because of what we said. When you do a 1031 exchange, you get to indefinitely defer paying the tax on both depreciation recapture and the profit. And as long as you own that property, you will never pay the tax. It will continue to work for you. But secondly, and even more importantly, why you do it is because every day that is in your control, you're making the money.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it lasts for 1 year or whether it lasts for a lifetime, there's benefit. Just like putting money into an IRA or a 401k,
Right.
it's going to let it grow tax deferred. I'll let you on a big difference though. The 1031 is actually better to never have to pay the tax. So let's have a go. Who's going to answer the next question?
I'll take this one.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
All right. What's the second D?
So the first D was defer. The second D is depreciate.
That's a great answer, but it's not right.
Dang
The
it.
second D is defer.
Okay.
And here's why. Because anytime you sell that property, you can use the 1031 exchange to go from any location in the United States to any other location. You can use it to sell any type of real estate and purchase any other type of real estate. You can go from areas where appreciation is high, but they've topped out, to areas where cash flow is better,
Right.
but not much appreciation. You could go from the Bay Area of San Francisco, right when it's 2013 and it's crazy, and go invest in Austin, where prices are dirt cheap until Elon moves there.
Right.
And what have you done? In each of those cases, you've examined the market and you've positioned yourself strategically for the future
Right.
using the 1031 exchange. All right, so Seth, it's your turn. What's the
I'm ready.
third D?
So we got deferred taxes, and what the second D was differ or
Defer.
Defer. So two deferreds. Okay. Divest. No.
It's defer.
Is it defer again?
Garrett's got it. Yes, it's defer. Seth, it was all in your hands.
I know. Well,
The NCAA championship was right there. Oh my goodness. Yeah, defer. Because as you go through your life cycle, you don't just want to change types and locations, but many times you're going to go through this movement where you want to go from active investing to passive investing. And as you get later in life, so moving from a single family portfolio and selling several properties to 1031 into one larger property that could be managed by someone, or going into types of syndications that will accept 1031 dollars, Delaware statutory trusts, or the move to prepare for retirement, to move your portfolio from Cincinnati to Sarasota, Florida.
Yeah. And that's why
And
you
get your
were
portfolio
saying
ahead of time.
you alluded earlier to the fact that you have like lifetime clients, because it's not just we do a transaction with you. You're in many ways kind of a financial advisor in the real estate sector, helping chart a course proactively for someone to continue to use this vehicle for whatever their next life season is.
Yeah, now a QI by law has to be an unrelated third party. So, yeah, there's some advice that can be given and taken, particularly because I've lived there and been there and done it. But technically, all we do is document the 1031s because the IRS requires it. So I'm kind of like Switzerland. I'm everybody's buddy. We exist because you're required to use us. So that's it. So sell the portfolio in Cincinnati and go buy a bunch of rentals in Sarasota, Florida. Go buy a vacation rental in the Panhandle,
Yeah.
where you can use it some yourself. You get the idea. You're maturing in life, and your needs are changing.
Well, and to your, this is the point. This is a light bulb moment for me. So we oftentimes fixate in the 1031 exchange the capital gains that you are retaining and deferring that tax. Okay, but equally, that is one compounding effect. But you mentioned another one, which is to then reinvest and relocate your capital into a market that's ripe. Maybe it's hasn't matured yet. So then you're taking those tax dollars and keeping that in an investment, potentially into an area that is going to see a lot of appreciation. And that's when you're going to get some exponential, kind of that hockey stick growth, so to speak.
That's exactly right. I call it finding the holes in the market, those places, those markets that will be, but aren't yet.
Right.
And so you sell in the market you're at the top, and then you go buy in the underdeveloped markets. And yeah, you get a ramp of everything there. Now, there's one other huge opportunity in this third D of deferred. And that is that the 1031 exchange is always going to be a sale of investment real estate, followed by a purchase of investment real estate. But it does not have to stay investment forever. Once you have established by owning it a year or two that you're using it for investment, you can convert it into your primary residence. Now, are you guys and your listeners familiar with the primary residence rules?
Yeah, but go over them because there's often there's just some confusion around
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, they're very cool. If you buy a property and move into it, once you have lived in it for 2 out of the 5 years prior to selling it, then you get to sell it. And if you're married, the first $500,000 of profit is tax free. Yeah, tax free. And you can do that once every 2 years.
Wow.
So, really, if you're going to have one investing strategy for your life, that's it. Buy a house, move into it, live in it for a few years, sell it, take the money tax free, go buy another one. And by the time I think NAR tells us that people will move 8 to 10 times in their life. I laugh at that, but that's just me. Most normal people will move 8 to 10 times. So, right there is 10 times in your life to take up to $500,000 tax free. That's $5 million of tax free money available to you simply by moving in
Wow.
and selling and moving out.
And
Is
that
that
was
crazy?
one of our clients actually was at an investor meetup that we had last month. And him and his wife just purchased an investment property, vacation home in Gatlinburg. Okay, so we had somebody speaking about 1031 exchanges, and he mentioned that exact principle of that strategy of buying a 1031ing, and your replacement property is a vacation rental investment property, and then converting that into your primary residence and using that as a strategy to essentially defer those taxes. And you're saying tax free, as in it's not just
Yes, because, and this is how we used it. Do you remember I mentioned that we would periodically convert our rental properties into our primary residence?
Mm-hmm.
So we moved into them. When we moved into it, now this is prior to 2008. When we moved into it, it was converted into our primary. We lived in it for 2 years. And then when we sold, we'd get the $500,000 tax free. In 2008, the IRS took my poster photograph down off their lunchroom wall and changed the rules so that now you don't get the whole thing. But if you 1031 a property into an investment property and then later convert it into your primary residence, if you have owned it for 5 years, if you have lived in it for 2 out of the previous 5 years, then you can sell it and get to prorate the gain tax free.
right.
So let's say we did what, by the way, I do so much up in Sevierville and
Mm-hmm.
Gatlinburg.
Yeah.
This guy may be one of our clients, who knows? But if you bought the property, used it for investment for 2 years, then you moved into it and lived in it for three. Did you own it for 5 years? Yeah. Have you lived in it for 2 out of the previous five?
Yes.
So you would get 3/5 or 60% of the gain, including all that deferred gain, tax free,
Oh wow, including the deferred gain. So if you had
including the
already,
deferred gain.
wow.
Live in it for 8 years and you get 80%
Now, is there
of the
still
gain
a
tax free.
depreciation recapture?
Yes, you do have to recapture depreciation. So you're going to have to pay that. But as I'm looking at the end of my life and thinking about, oh, I got to go bag groceries if another bank fails, or I'm going to have to go deliver pizzas, that's a W 2 job. I'm going to pay some taxes anyways, aren't I?
Right.
How about if instead I do what my little broker down on St. Pete Beach did, where he bought three identical condos side by side that are beachfront, and he used them for investment, and then he moved into the first one.
Wow.
Lives in it for a while, he sells it. He's going to take part of the money tax free. He's going to pay some tax. Where's he going to move?
Number two.
Into the next one
Right.
and into the next one. Dude, it's the crazy. So that's what we did every time we went into a new market, and the tax free dollars went into the buy the boat fund.
The world is my playground.
Yeah, and that's how we bought the boat, was
Wow.
with those tax free dollars. So that's the third D. All right, we're back to, this is the lightning round.
I think I can
Yeah,
get this one.
you want
He's
it?
gonna
It's all set.
All right. The fourth D, defer.
Wrong.
Okay.
Garrett, I think that makes you the champion. Cue
Let's
the
go.
music. It's die. And I know die is not something we think about. It's not something I want. But hey, we're all heading there anyways, right?
I feel like you were giving me a layup, and then you just smacked
Swatted
it,
it away.
So.
Yeah, Dikembe Mutombo was creeping up behind you right there, baby. So, wow, does anybody even know who he is? Dikembe.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Back in the day, original.
I was showing,
NBA
thank
hardwoods
you.
right there.
You had to say that, didn't you, back in the day when I was young? Thank you. Yeah, it's die. And here's why. Because when you finally cash out and go to that big open house in the sky, your heirs inherit your property as if they paid market value for it on the day you died.
Yeah, that's
So your
crazy.
estate doesn't pay the tax. You don't pay the tax. Your heirs don't pay the tax. It truly becomes tax free. So the 4 Ds throughout your life: defer, defer, defer. Remember how much you can do and how you can position things? That's what our clients do.
Yeah.
And then finally they die. I really do have one third generation client.
Wow.
We started doing exchanges for a gentleman in Connecticut many years ago. And when he died, his son inherited everything, had a step up in basis. His son A couple years later, needed to start doing 1031s again. And then he passed away not too long ago, and his children inherited the property tax
Wow.
free.
Wow.
That's 3 generations of real
Yeah.
estate investors
Yeah.
never paying a penny in
Wow.
tax.
Man, I would love, love, love if they could take the time to chart what the wealth savings was by using that vehicle across because we talk about generational wealth,
Right.
legacy wealth. That's what we're talking about, is setting up your children and your grandchildren. And, if they're good stewards of that, then your great grandchildren for that,
Right.
and creating a different path that way. This is a good segue. I want to go into one of the other questions we had. So there's different schools of thought out there, right? So I've even had accountants talk to us about this before. So what are your thoughts on the opinion that taxes are on sale right now and pay now or you'll pay more later? So just eat it, bite it, get it over with, rip the Band-Aid off because it could be worse later.
How do I say this and not trigger my gag reflex? First of all, the fact that taxes are cheap is a misnomer. If you go back since 1940, back into the 30s, and you look at the federal capital gains rate of tax, you'll find that there's a remarkable consistency of it. Spikes during times of war and times when the United States was needing to generate income for certain things. But overall, it hasn't fluctuated more than a couple percent either way. So I get it. Everybody feels like Congress never met a tax they don't like, and it's only going to get worse. But the tax code is also a behavior incentivizer. And there's a reason why 1031s exist. There's a reason why capital gains are cheaper than ordinary income. And it's because that's what the IRS wants you to deal in. So to do something because of the fear that you're going to pay more later when historically that hasn't panned out, that's just stupid.
Right.
Wow, I said that.
And it seems
Neither one of you guys buy into that, of course, right?
No, of course not.
No, I mean, it seems to fly in the face of just compound interest. I mean, that principle at a very simple value is the more that you can compound the earnings that you have on top of those earnings, the wealthier that you will get. So, but it's a common thing that I come in contact with.
We've been hearing it a lot this year.
I get asked all the time that exact same question. And my answer is because you don't have to pay it. Remember, you can defer it, and then you die. So as long as you want to invest in real estate, I think 1031's a great ticket.
Good. We're going to move on to our next show segment, the smaller pockets. So what was one of your worst deals? And it could have been like a real estate specific for you, or it could have been a 1031 deal. And what did you learn from it?
Well, my worst deal ever. And remember, I operate on the philosophy that your worst deal is not the deal you don't get. Your worst deal is the one you got that you shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And you pay the price for it. I bought a tract of land. I annexed it into a city. I floated bonds. We turned it into lots in a beautiful subdivision. And then I sold it. And I sold it using owner financing to save on some taxes. Yeah, mistake number one. I should have kept developing it because this was, and you'll recognize why, the year, it was 2006.
Wow.
I sold it at the top. Unfortunately, not a house got built, and that owner financing that I had carried was worthless. Now, the bright side of the story is, and this is where the lesson lies, I foreclosed. I took it back over. I re-energized it. I turned it into new lots. And we have now, over the last 8 years, have turned that into a 20 multiplier over what we would have made if I just would have gotten paid off by the guys. Wow. So the lesson, don't give up.
Yeah.
Fight to keep your deal alive. Because you never know from what turn you're going to find relief.
How long did it take you to foreclose and get that land back?
We did not get the land back until 2012.
Wow.
Whoa.
You were working on that a while then.
6 years.
Oh.
6 years. Yeah.
So then did you end up partnering with a builder or just sell the lots outright?
My partner and I, one of my partners, I brought back into the deal, and we just continued with the same model. We found a consortium of builders. We started selling the lots to the builders, and away we went.
That's
But yeah,
incredible.
to get it because that company that had bought from us had turned the land and sold every lot to individual cronies and friends of theirs. So I had to foreclose on 54 lots.
Oh my gosh, that's
No.
crazy because it wasn't all held by one person
Oh
anymore.
my goodness.
Oh,
I'm pretty happy with the outcome, though.
well, I bet you were.
Yeah, that's the light at the end of the tunnel that you didn't see at the time, but it's a good thing you hung in there.
Absolutely. And you had mentioned earlier, hey, banks and landowners, right? Some of the two wealthiest kind of demographics of people historically. When you own the land, it's a real asset. And so you were able to, especially with land, your basis was so low in it that you could ride until the next market cycle came around. And I mean, what were you selling those lots for? I mean, just over the last 10 years.
They went from 6,000 up to 30 each.
Wow.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that is awesome.
That's a really good story. That's different. We've not encountered one like that.
That's one of the tops. It was like a crash and burn, but then you pulled up out of there. So that was good.
I actually have a good friend who does this as a model. He develops restaurants because he's so good at it. And then he sells the restaurant, but not the building. And as soon as the restaurant flames out, because almost nobody who goes into food and beverage knows what to do, he forecloses on them, takes everything back over, uses their huge down payment, and does it again.
Wow.
And he's created in the same building 7 or 8 different restaurants.
Oh my word.
Wow. And he just keeps selling it. Someone buys it. They
and
fail.
He keeps the land and building.
He must be really creative to come up with all that. You know what I mean?
That's incredible.
Wow.
All right. One of our last show segments here is what we call our little nugget. So, Dave, what is one practical takeaway or a piece of advice for our listeners to implement into their real estate investing businesses?
Although I'm an adrenaline junkie, and I just love the thrill of making deals and doing things, to really succeed in real estate takes patience. Without patience, you're going to sign deals too quickly. You're going to get out of deals too quickly. You'll get discouraged and give up too quickly because it feels like the growth comes so slow. And it's not a stock market ride. If you want the thrill of the stock market, you got to go invest in the stock market. But if you want the benefits that real ownership has for you, it's got to be patient and it's going to be a lifelong thing for you. But you will enjoy it, and more importantly, your children will.
Yeah.
That's a good word.
That's great advice.
Dave, what's been one of the greatest resources in your real estate investing career?
My wife, she is the yin to my yang, the no to my yes, the buffer that keeps me grounded. She's awesome.
Is she in that room watching you right now?
That's the real question.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Real estate is a team sport. We got
Absolutely.
back from a conference not long ago, and whether it's within your marriage context and your relationship with your spouse, or it's just good partnerships or collaboration. I mean, we're not meant to do this in silos.
Yeah.
And having that support is a huge resource. But real quick, talk about your company and your guys' passion to educate investors and how our listeners might be able to follow what you guys are doing and the success that you're having.
We learned long ago, way back in the 90s, that this was going to be something where the greatest need was education. So we developed the 1031 investor to do 1031s, but with a niche in providing the education and the strategic coaching to help people get their direction. So the 1031investor.com is the best place to find us. If you have trouble sleeping at night, I've got a 32-part YouTube video series, all done in my Barry White go to sleep now voice. We've got calculators. We've got opportunities to consult with us directly to help you figure these things out. We want to be part of your non-silo. We want to be on your team. And so that's how we've developed it. And honestly, it's kind of fun because it's like it was so much fun doing it for ourselves. And now we get to watch others doing it the same way. And that's just a ball.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. And two, I mean, even just on top of that, for people listening, they're like, oh, well, yeah, sure, they're going to educate. And maybe if this is your first time hearing about 1031 exchanges, you're like, that sounds awesome, but what's the catch? It's really not even that expensive, Dave. I mean, really, for someone to get a 1031 exchange done, I mean, do you have any figures that you can give? Because really, it's affordable for almost anybody. If you're selling property, you can get a 1031 exchange done.
I mean, nationwide, for us, if your sale is less than $1 million, the fee to do a 1031 exchange is $950. I mean, that's really it for a complete exchange because it's only a small part. But when I tell people, so when someone is considering the price like that, and they will say, I'm scared I can't find a property because you only have 45 days to identify your replacement property. I say, well, here's the deal. 90% of our clients that start 1031 exchanges finish them with properties they like. Some fall apart. Yep, they sure do. But 90%. Now, you, whoever the client is, you've got a $30,000 tax bill staring at you. If I told you that I was selling lottery tickets for $1,000, but they had a 90% chance of winning you $30,000, how many would you buy?
Right.
As many as I could get my hands on.
Right.
And if you don't, it's a tax write-off expense anyways. So now, the 1031 exchange is kind of a noise level part of the transaction financially, but it can sure reap some big benefits.
And that's what we didn't get into the misnomers, but one of the misnomers is, well, I don't have that big of a gain, so that wouldn't be an applicable thing for me. But if you have $5,000 worth of taxes come due that you could compound and leverage, why would you not? When 20% of that's the cost of doing the exchange, and you could keep the other $4,000. So,
got 30 seconds for my favorite client of all time.
Oh, please.
Little old lady in Cape Coral, Florida, had owned a lot forever for $1,000. She was selling it for $11,000, and she wanted to do a 1031 exchange, $10,000 gain. We calculated it. We went over it. I said, by the time you pay your exchange fee, you're only saving $700 or $800. And her words, yeah, but that's my $800. You bet I'm doing it.
Wow.
It's a philosophy.
Yeah.
Man. It's a mindset.
Saving money.
That's awesome. Well, Dave, thank you so much. I love this kind of topic because it's unfolding beyond kind of the surface 101 level of the strategies available to investors and why real estate is one of the most amazing investment vehicles out there. And so, I appreciate your heart to give back and help people do what you guys were able to do. And you're in a really cool seat right now to facilitate that. So
how can people get a hold of your company?
Best way is just to go to the1031investor.com.
Awesome.
We'll put all those show notes in our show notes. You can go there with links and stuff to get a hold of Dave and reach out. Please do. Dave, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
As always, excited that you joined us on another episode of the Reinvest Podcast. If this episode added to your tool belt or left you feeling inspired, go ahead and share it with a friend. Stay tuned every Tuesday for new episodes. And if you want to get in touch with us, go to our LinkedIn or Facebook profiles and shoot us a message. Move farther, reach higher, and grow deeper. See you next time.